So, the Jan Fuhrer, the ferret-headed fool, he went ahead and addressed the nation. So let's hear what your leader has to say.
Morning. Our nation is overcome with shock, horror, and sorrow. This weekend,
Corridor, Fora, Shora, the horror of the thing, horror. Does he even look at his speeches before he starts reading them? It's almost like Anchorman, Ron Burgundy, right? You just write it down on a piece of paper, put it in front of them.
more than 80 people were killed or wounded
Horror.
in two evil attacks. One Saturday morning in El Paso, Texas, a wicked man went to a Walmart store where families were shopping with their loved ones. He shot and murdered 20 people and injured 26 others, including precious little children.
A Walmart store? Has he ever been to Walmart? I mean, it happened at Walmart. A Walmart store.
Then, in the early hours of Sunday morning, Dayton, Ohio, another twisted monster opened fire on a crowded downtown street. He murdered 9 people, including his own sister, and injured 27 others. The First Lady and I join all Americans in praying and grieving for the victims, their families, and the survivors.
I like the grieving part, the fact that it's not just thoughts and prayers, but there's grieving too, because there is a grieving process. Now, eventually what Jan Fuhrer is going to go on and, just spout his orange diarrhea mouth off. That's the problem. Why don't you just shut the fuck up? Shut the fuck up. You've been spreading your goddamn diarrhea mouth ever since you started. Ever since you began to become president. You're goddamn president. You get into these petty squabbles with the trash man, right? Oh, he give me a bad look, so you're going to tweet and then what? Hope that he loses his job or some shit? God damn, you're the fucking president, so add some goddamn dignity to the office. People are right. What we're spreading this is a good change, cultural. This is a good cultural change, huh? Being assholes to each other, being dicks, being authoritarian, being fascist. He's going to recommend a whole bunch of stuff, and so this is, that's just perfect, isn't it? He's going to recommend a whole bunch of shit. So he's going to say a bunch of shit. One of his racist, goons, one of the Trump tards who, who's lost it at his wit's end, goes and does a heinous crime. So this is a fucking civil war, right? This is what the Republicans are talking about. They're just talking about shooting a bunch of innocent people. That's their civil war, right? And so one of the Trump tards does his bidding. And instead of saying, let's get, gun control is what the Democrats would push, he could, end the war on poverty. He could introduce universal basic income. He could pass health care. He could get out of the wars. But he's not going to do anything for the people. He don't give a damn about the people. So he's going to suggest all these things. So that's perfect, right? He talks a bunch of shit. One of his goons goes out and kills a bunch of people. Now he gets to shove his agenda down our throat. He's going to sit there and say, we need to stop the glorification of violence, and then he's going to bring up the death penalty. Stop the glorification of violence, now let's kill this motherfucker. And justice does say that they should be put to death, and if he is able to do that, then that might, quash, everything that the nation is, in a frenzy. He's going to say racism and bigotry and white supremacy. He's going to condemn all those things. Racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. Again, none of this sounds like his own thoughts or his own words. He's just reading it. But that's perfect, right? So he's pushing for the death penalty beforehand. One of his goons goes out and destroys, hurts a bunch of innocent people. Now he gets to shove his agenda down our throats. Well, that one of his goons, he got exactly what he wanted. He got exactly what he wanted. So let's listen to more.
We will stand by their side forever. We will never forget. These barbaric slaughters are an assault upon our communities, an attack upon our nation, and a crime against all of humanity. We are outraged and sickened by this monstrous evil, the cruelty, the hatred, the malice, the bloodshed, and the terror. Our hearts are shattered for every family whose parents, children, husbands, and wives were ripped from their arms and their lives. America weeps for the fallen. We are a loving nation, and our children are entitled to grow up in a just, peaceful, and loving society. Together, we lock arms to shoulder the grief. We ask God in heaven to ease the anguish of those who suffer, and we vow to act with urgent resolve. I want to thank the many law enforcement personnel who responded to these atrocities with the extraordinary grace and courage of American heroes. I have spoken with Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, as well as Mayor DeMargo of El Paso, Texas, and Mayor Nan.
Okay, so you talk to a bunch of people. Who gives a fuck? You fucking... Oh, man, he's racist. He's been saying all this violent shit. He loves the Nazis. Now, all of a sudden, what? Nazis aren't so great? I thought back in his days, you knocked them out, right? You just, hurt the people. There's two things he's going to suggest, right? The death penalty. He's also going to mention mental health. Actually, there's several things. Red flag laws, and then also something with the internet. So he's going to take away internet freedoms, collectively punish everybody with the internet. He's saying that there's dark recesses in the internet, so that's interesting. There's, I guess, attack net neutrality. Let's just get rid of net neutrality. He did mention red flag laws, which are kind of common sense, right? If there's some red flags, then you get to take their guns with rapid due process. So he was in favor of red flag laws. So do expect red flag laws. That would probably actually calm the Democrats down. They got, he give them some, red meat there. But he's going to talk about mental health, and including involuntary confinement. So he's going to sit there and just, it's not a gun issue, it's a mental health. So they're kind of, there is mental health, but it's also a sick society. I was thinking there's 2 points, okay? Bernie Sanders would, definitely help all this. But he wants to, the two things that I think that could fix this, because it has to be something ambitious and something big. So for me, yeah, there's problems with gun shootings, but we have so many problems. We're just going to go ahead and put a little Band-Aid, a little superficial Band-Aid on this problem. Why are people so, this is America. Why are people losing their minds and just taking it out on innocent people? To some degree, I think we have to tolerate some level of, terrorism in the sense that you can't stop somebody from just losing their shit and going around hurting people. And so I guess what the other people would argue is that, well, you could limit the tools that they have in their hands, so that way, if they have a hammer, then they might be able to hurt just one person, but they're not going to hurt, an entire crowd of people. So, fix the police department. Stop child abuse. Child abuse. 80% of Americans think that the parents think that it's okay to hit children. So, corporal punishment, violence begets violence. We don't have to hit our kids. The fact that you think that hitting kids is acceptable shows me, that tells me everything I need to know about you. You're going to hit your own kid. Oh, man, you're brave. Wow. What if I hit you when you hit your own kid? You're going to have a problem with that? Well, that's justice. So, that's eye for an eye. Why don't you pick on somebody your own size, you fucking bully? Fix the police department. The police set the example. So Eric Gardner got murdered by Daniel Pantaleo, and then he got fired, and then the police union is going to stand up and act like Daniel Pantaleo, who murdered Eric Gardner, who at the very worst was selling cigarettes when he wasn't supposed to, selling loose leaf cigarettes for what? $0.25, $1 a piece? And so that's the crime. There's sunflower laws on the books in Pueblo. So if you raise a sunflower and Daniel Pantaleo comes to your house, well then you won't be raising sunflowers no more. Never ever again. And so this says that police can murder. They set the example. We also got a war machine that's out of control, so we're killing people in Cameroon. So people don't talk about getting rid of the assault rifle, but what about the nukes and the tanks and the destroy? What are we doing in Cameroon? Starting up another Vietnam? Because Vietnam just started under Truman, right? All Americans understand Vietnam. Truman started Vietnam. It lasted 25 years. 1975 was when it ended. You're American, of course you know about Vietnam. So Truman started Vietnam, right? And that's what we're doing in Africa for like 20 different countries. I'm sure the Cameroon fight, I'm sure that great Cameroon War of Americas, I'm sure that's the most important war that we got going on now, right? Don't glorify violence, but we were in 27 wars. Don't glorify violence, but if you're a police officer, hey, we're just doing our job. We're just doing our jobs. Okay, you call us, we come out, we beat people up, that's our job. That's my Brooklyn accent, or whatever that guy was, that police union. We're just doing our job, that's just what we do. Hey, yo, whoa, whoa. You want to attack racism, bigotry, white supremacy, past reparations. So there's a bunch of stuff right there. There's a ton of stuff that you could do if he truly wanted to actually fix things.
Express our profound sadness and unfailing support. Today, we also send the condolences of our nation to President Obrador of Mexico and all the people of Mexico for the loss of their citizens in the El Paso shooting. Terrible, terrible thing. I have also been in close contact.
Does that sound genuine? Oh, there's been a mass shooting. Terrible. Terrible thing. It's just terrible.
With Attorney General Barr and FBI Director Wray. Federal authorities are on the ground, and I have directed them to provide any and all assistance required, whatever is needed. The shooter in El Paso posted a manifesto online consumed by racist hate. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy.
He's totally flipped. Who the hell is this guy? This ain't the president. This is somebody else. Somebody else wrote this speech because he's like, oh shit, this racism shtick I've been doing, I need to stop. So he's actually condemning racism straight up. And then that's probably, he's needed to do that for quite some time. But that's because the shooter said, well, because Donald Trump told me to do this, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. There's an invasion on the border, so, somebody's got to do something. Nobody's doing it. Trump is pissed off, and the Democrats are just for open borders, so they just want a lawless society. So he used all the language that Trump uses. This is why, this is good rhetoric, but is he going to stick to his guns? Now, he will stick to, his guns, but the mental health, all those other things. Only red flag law, my prediction, is going to get passed if anything comes out of this. But all those other shit, that's more authoritarianism. To curb free speech, authoritarianism, mental health, death penalty, so he gets to pursue his own agenda.
These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. Hatred warps the mind, ravages the heart, and devours the soul.
So Trump is like the opposite of a Hitler. Hitler had the Reichstag, and then he blamed it on the communists, and then he cracked down on society. But Donald Trump is going to see, one of his own people do this heinous crime, and then he's going to impose his own, authoritarian will on top of that because of what he did. Now, we need to not listen to Trump at all in this, and just whatever Bernie Sanders is saying, that's what we need to do. We just need to do what Bernie's doing and quit listening to this asshole.
We have asked the FBI to identify all further resources they need to investigate
all further
and
what?
disrupt hate crimes and domestic terrorism, whatever they need. We must recognize that the internet has provided a dangerous avenue to radicalize, disturb minds, and perform demented acts. We must shine light on the dark recesses of the internet and stop mass murders before they start. The internet likewise is used for human trafficking, illegal drug distribution, and so many other heinous crimes. The perils of the internet and social media cannot be ignored, and they will not be ignored. In the 2 decades since Columbine, our nation has watched with rising horror and
Horror?
one mass shooting has followed another.
Horror.
Over and over again.
He didn't write this
decade
speech.
after decade. We cannot allow ourselves to feel powerless. We can and will stop this evil contagion. In that task, we must honor the sacred memory of those we have lost by acting as one people. Open wounds cannot heal if we are divided. We must seek real bipartisan solutions. We have to do that in a bipartisan manner that will truly make America safer and better for all. First, we must do a better job of identifying and acting on early warning signs. I am directing the Department of Justice to work in partnership with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as social media companies, to develop tools that can detect mass shooters before they strike. As an example, the monster in the Parkland High School in Florida had many red flags against him, and yet nobody took decisive action. Nobody did anything.
I want to mention a couple things about Parkland. It does seem like those kids were bullying that, the shooter. So the shooter doesn't seem like he was powerful and just living high on the hog and he just, snapped and just, out of nowhere. It seemed like he was weird. He had a weird face. He had a weird personality. His parents were dead. So he had nobody except for that, lady that's going to try to take I think she took his trust fund. So you're staying with the lady that's scheming against you. Vulture, takes all the property that you have but she didn't advise him to, get a hold of it beforehand. So the Parkland thing, there's a lot of things that's going on with that case. The media definitely blew that up, and they're politicizing all this, right? MSNBC is going to be the biggest politicizers, but they're not going to say the shooter's name to not get... You're, telling the story, and you're looking at all the bloodshed, and you're saying gun control, gun control, gun control. And so, yeah, there's more to what's going on in society than just the things that they're talking about, okay? So, that kid, he's going to totalitarian schools, getting yelled at in class. He's got a bad, home life. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares about him. And then you're just being told to shut up, sit down, listen to the totalitarian dictator, in the classroom, public schools. It's terrible. It's awful. You get bullied. And, it's just basically if you're, do well in school, you're looked down upon. And what a stupid fucking concept. What an absolute dumb concept. So, okay.
Why not? Second,
Why not?
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace.
007.
It's too easy today for troubled youth
Doom.
to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. Cultural change is hard, but each of us can choose to build a culture that celebrates the inherent worth and dignity of every human life. That's what we have to do. Third...
So what do we do with the video games? We're going to pass laws saying that we can't have violent video games anymore? The 007, you're the spy, you're the hero. And so, unless the video game is just like teaching bad stuff and it's just vulgar, I can't define porn, but I know it when I say I can't define when a video game is just teaching bad stuff. But I guess, you could just be like, Genghis Khan just raping and pillaging. So if you had a video game where there's raping and pillaging, well then that's, are they going to pass a law to stop that? Because that would be influential in a very bad way. So, there's some argument, but then again, we're curbing free speech, or curbing what people do in the, privacy of their own homes. And perhaps there's a lot of psychos out here, and they actually use video games as an outlet, right? As they don't act upon their impulses because they get played on a video game. So they get to be polite outside and then, come back home and just play Grand Theft Auto and just, tell everybody what's up. So, that's, and that's another thing. We're collectively punishing everybody. He's going to shove a legislative agenda down our throats. Why don't he just, give us like, hey, this is what I think about things, right? Hey, there should have been more guns, hey. But this is the solution. So, okay, you got two racist people that just snapped and they started shooting a bunch of innocent people. So now we're gonna ban video games, ban the internet, we're gonna ban mental health, we're gonna ban red flags, and we're gonna ban we're gonna bring back the death penalty.
We must reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals who may commit acts of violence and make sure those people not only get treatment, but when necessary.
Yeah, acts of violence such as the commander-in-chief, like what the commander-in-chief does in Cameroon, and in Nigeria, or Niger, and Yemen, and, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. Yeah, what about Venezuela? What about taking their oil refinery? What about the Cold War? Give me a fucking... What about the kids in cages? Separating families. The glorification of violence. You're the fucking biggest glorificator of violence there is.
Involuntary confinement. Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger, not the gun. Fourth, we must make sure that those judged to pose a grave risk to public safety do not have access to firearms, and that if they do, those firearms can be taken through rapid due process. That is why I have called for red flag laws, also known as extreme risk protection orders. Today, I'm also directing the Department of Justice to propose legislation.
So he mentioned the mental health thing, and that's the problem, not the gun. It's mental health, not the gun. So he's going to do red line things, but he's also, winking at the Second Amendment crowd, saying, that's all we're going to do. We're not going to do any more than just the red flag laws. I'm still pro-gun.
Ensuring that those who commit hate crimes and mass murders face the death penalty, and that this capital punishment be delivered quickly, decisively, and without years of needless delay. These are just a few of the areas of cooperation.
Now, that's huge news. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are coming out against the death penalty. He passed the 94 crime bill, which actually added the death penalty to 61 additional crimes. But now he's opposed to the death penalty. So, he's evolving. At least his rhetoric is evolving. So Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are opposed to the death penalty, and Trump is actually pushing. I've heard that Trump has picked like 3 different cases of where they killed and maimed children. And those are going to be the test cases to, kind of put it before the American people and just kill them. Just, execute them, even though it's, unconstitutional. It's not, I don't know what the arguments are. I don't even know what the federal law is, actually. But for some reason, I think Tim McVeigh was like one of the last people we've executed in this country.
That we can pursue. I am open and ready to listen and discuss all ideas that will actually work and make a very big difference.
As a national government.
Republicans and Democrats have proven that we can join together in a bipartisan fashion to address this plague. Last year, we enacted the Stop School Violence and Fix NICS Acts into law, providing grants to improve school safety and strengthening critical background checks for firearm purchases. At my direction, the Department of Justice banned bump stocks. Last year, we prosecuted a record number of firearms offenses. But there is so much more.
So we went ahead and did bump stocks. We're giving you this, red flag laws. What more you want, Democrats? Isn't that enough gun control? And then meanwhile, since I give you a little piece of gun control, now here's, my agenda. So we need to build the wall. We need to hurry up and build that wall. The quicker we build a wall, then the less guns. They're coming from Mexico. We build a wall, then we need to, institute the death penalty and make Saudi Arabia the 51st state. Actually, just give the country to Saudi Arabia and China. Just sell it, then, and then some other stupid shit he does.
That we have to do. Now is the time to set destructive partisanship aside. So destructive. And find the courage to answer hatred with unity, devotion, and love.
It's interesting how the Unitarian, the monarch, the dictators always say, let's have unity behind me. Let's have unity behind Bernie Sanders. I'll go, I'll be for unity behind Bernie. No, just do what Bernie... Hey, Donald Trump, you want unity? Just do whatever the hell Bernie introduces. He introduces 5, pieces of legislation. Pass all 5. There, you'll get your unity that way.
Our future is in our control. America will rise to the challenge. We will always have, and we always will, win. The choice is ours,
yes,
and ours alone. It is not up to mentally ill monsters. It is up to us. That we are able to pass great legislation after all of these years. We will ensure that those who were attacked will not have died in vain. May God bless the memory of those who perished in Toledo. And may God protect them. May God protect all of those from Texas to Ohio. May God bless the victims and their families. May God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And then he just scurried out of the press room as quick as he can. Didn't want to answer no questions. Yeah, all eyes on him. All eyes on him. He was able to spit out a speech. I thought he would have... He can't say horror right. And then all these policies. It's just incredible to me that you're going to have one of Trump's minions, one of Trump's psychopaths. He's going to inflame him to, to action. And then he's going to use this crisis, all this bloodshed, in order to, institute the death penalty. Not just for them two, but for, whoever's on death row now and forever he... So I'm actually okay with the death penalty. They do deserve to die, and if he was, this might be the perfect opportunity. Wouldn't that be crazy? You get some red flag laws, and then the death penalty is legalized. I respect progressives that are opposed to the death penalty because essentially they're saying the state, it's cruel and unusual. The state is going to take a life. The state, they usually kill more of their own citizens than they do foreign citizens. So if you allow them to, so anyways, but then it also could be a relief valve because you have James Holmes. James Holmes killed all those kids, and here Colorado's protecting him, feeding him, clothing him, and in fact he's got like special treatment because, everybody knows him, so he gets special treatment. So we spend extra money to house that son of a bitch when, if you did it real efficient, I feel like actually execution and shots and, how they do it now, hanging, I feel like firing squad is probably the best way to do it. Firing squad. That's cheap, it's efficient, and the quicker that you do it, the quicker that you, get it accomplished, the better. Those 3 drug cocktails after the second drug, like, it only does it for the people, but for the guy or for the gal, for the person being executed, they're lying there, and they could feel everything, but they can't react, they can't move, and so they just live in this, human prison, this human shell prison, while slowly their veins get filled with poison, and then it feels like fire, and then they fucking die somehow. Eventually that leads to a death, but they can't move or react to it, so they just have to sit there and endure it. So it's just for the people, because when they're shaken, then it makes the people uncomfortable, so they they'll drug the person up to where they can't react. So that's fucking cruel as shit. Are you trying to get sympathy for these people, these monsters? You're also, creating martyrs out of them, and there's a bunch of arguments. I don't know. For the most heinous crimes, I'm okay with the death penalty. For some reason, it's the Constitution. There's something about the federal law about, there's no death penalty. Are you allowed to, the Constitution doesn't say in, freedom of speech and right to institute death penalty. I don't know. I think there's because the federal government is limited in their powers. So is there an argument about it's not constitutional, or is this something else? Anyways, yeah, America, I guess we're gonna get the death penalty. So stop the glorification of violence. Now let's execute this motherfucker.